Amazing. A $50,000 challenge. Amazing. Thank you, Mr. Cunningham. And now it's time to begin this action. Nancy Maeker, Director for A Minnesota Without Poverty, will guide us through our first steps. Nancy. I'm going to pass in front of you.
Okay. That last piece of news, we didn't know that until this evening. Gary, that's pretty amazing. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Louis. We've heard from Senator, oh, that's history, excuse me. We've heard from Governor-elect Mark Dayton. We've seen some sobering statistics about poverty, and there's a story of a person behind every statistic. Remember that. We've heard the challenge and the hope from our keynote speaker, Gary Cunningham. Now it's our time to speak and to act. Our call to action takes 3 parts this evening: 2 legislative actions and 1 artistic expression. They go together. First, to lead us in the state legislative action is Deborah Schlick. Deborah, would you please come to the stage? Deborah is the Executive Director of Affirmative Options Coalition. Deborah will lead us in the state legislative action. Second, to lead us in the federal legislative action is Melissa Boteach. Melissa, would you come to the stage? Melissa, who came here from Washington, D.C. today to be with us at this gathering, is the manager of the Half in 10 campaign, the movement to cut U.S. poverty in half by 2020. We've heard that year before, haven't we? Deborah and Melissa.
Thank you. So here's the action for us tonight. We know that once again, our state faces a daunting deficit. And it's a deficit made worse by the fact that they've been using gimmicks in past years to really stack the deck this time round. But that doesn't need to be as far as we look. And our friends at the Minnesota Budget Project have a wonderful metaphor. They're asking policymakers to look at this deficit with bifocals, to look at the short term, to make immediate budget decisions, but to make sure as they look close up at those immediate decisions that they're remembering there are residents in this state still struggling in a very weak economy. But also to use those bifocals to look beyond, to look forward, to look into the future and look at the long term, and to look at what investments they're willing to make that help us rebuild a strong economy. And let's remember that what poverty is one thing poverty is the measure of weak points in the economy. And think about how different it would have been if when those foreclosures started in North Minneapolis, on the east side of St. Paul, in low-income communities, it hadn't just been dismissed as somebody making bad mistakes. What if we had recognized it was the beginning of the economy we all depend on unraveling? And what if we had recognized that more and more of us were going into bankruptcy, watching their economic lives ruined because health insurance wasn't working and illness drove people to bankruptcy? And what if we'd fixed health insurance 10 or 15 years ago? That's why we pay attention to poverty. So this is what we're asking you to do tonight. You, us, all around the state. This is the message to send to our state representatives and our state senators. The message is, as you tackle the deficit, tend to the future as well as the today. And the measure of your success will be whether fewer Minnesotans are in poverty in 2012 that are in poverty today. And the other measure of your success will be whether the new jobs and economic recovery brings us are the jobs that can support families, the jobs that can pay enough to meet the basic needs of food, shelter, transportation, and childcare. And remember, right now, almost 40% of the jobs in Minnesota cannot meet that test. So at your tables or at your website, when you look at the papers in your packets or the materials on the website, write your legislators a letter or send them an email. Tell him or her that you will be using the number of Minnesotans in poverty, as well as the proportion of new jobs that pay family-supporting wages as a measure of their job performance. Tell them this in your own words, a sentence or two about why it's so important to you. That's the most important message they can hear from us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me in from DC today. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all. Deborah's right. We just released a study at 5 and 10 that shows that child poverty alone is costing our economy upwards of $500 billion a year in increased healthcare cost, in less productivity, and in increased criminal justice expenditures. And we know, we've seen in the past that we can cut poverty in half. We've done it before. Poverty fell by over 40% between 1964 and 1973. So we know this goal is not unattainable. It's a matter of building the political and the public will to achieve it. What I want to do is take maybe 1 minute and tell you a little bit about 5 and 10, and then give you information both on a timely action opportunity that Congress is considering right now as we're speaking, and talk a little bit about what to expect in the new Congress and how we can communicate with our members of Congress about what we expect in the new 112th legislative session. So first, 5 and 10 is a national campaign. It's a partnership between the Center for American Progress Action Fund, the Coalition on Human Needs, and the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights to, again, build the political and public will to cut poverty in 5 and 10 years. And we do that by partnering with organizations such as the Minnesota to End Poverty, Affirmative Options, and Joint Religious Legislative Coalition here in Minnesota, and with other grassroots organizations across the country. So in addition to building the political and public will, we want to expand the constituency for taking action, and also to show our leaders that we're holding them accountable, as Deborah said. That's critical, that every year when that data come out, that we're judging them upon whether it's gone down or gone up, and the policy solutions they're advancing to make sure the numbers are going the right way. So right now, this is what we're working on. This is what's at stake. The lame duck session in Congress is a little bit more crowded, I think, than we all expected. But right now, there is a tax deal where we're looking at the possibility of extending the earned income tax credit, child tax credit reforms that were made last year that have kept millions out of poverty and helped low-wage working families make ends meet. We're looking at a 13-year extension of unemployment insurance. This is a program that kept 3.3 million people out of poverty last year. Not only that, it also, if we let this program lapse, 700,000 jobs are at stake because unemployment insurance creates demand in the economy. We are also pushing hard on Congress to finish the job on the TANF Emergency Fund. This is a program that's created 250,000 subsidized jobs, such as those we've talked about earlier today, for low-income families and long-term unemployed workers across the country, and it was allowed to expire. We can't let that happen. If we go to the next slide, we can just see a little bit of the stakes of what we're talking about here when Congress is debating this tax deal. A worker working full-time at the minimum wage with 2 kids stands to lose $1,500 if we don't extend that child tax credit. So the first part of the ask tonight is immediate. Write your member of Congress and tell them that whatever comes out of the tax deal that's being proposed right now, they cannot allow the EITC and child tax credit provisions to expire. They have to make sure that whatever moves forward at the end of the day, those are a part of that package. And I know that this is something that folks here have been working on all year, and we're at the culminating point, and we need one hard final push to make sure that we get a good package that comes out of Congress. So, the next Congress, we are expecting, we've already heard from members that they're anticipating a big cut in some of the discretionary spending programs. In fact, one proposal that we've heard on the table right now would cut 21% of some of the spending, and this would include programs that aid states like Minnesota and help low-income families across the country.